The containment facility on Station Omega-7 hummed with the nervous energy of 100 different species, all carefully avoiding Sector 12. Even the Krillian guards, known throughout the galaxy for their fearlessness in battle, refused to venture near the reinforced titanium doors that held the facility's most dangerous prisoner. Dr. Sarah Chen adjusted her medical scanner one more time, her hands steady despite the warnings echoing in her mind. 3 previous caretakers had been hospitalized. 2 had died. The creature inside had been labeled utterly savage by every xenobiologist who had attempted contact. Yet here she stood, a simple human veterinarian from Earth, about to enter the den of the galaxy's most feared predator. The Vorthak, as the species was known, stood nearly 9 feet tall when fully upright. Their wolf-like features were enhanced by razor-sharp claws that could slice through battle armor, and teeth designed to crush the bones of creatures twice their size. This particular specimen, designated Subject 847, had been captured after single-handedly destroying an entire galactic patrol squadron. The bite marks on the station's hull still served as a grim reminder of its power. Station Commander Kellix, a seasoned Dracorian warrior, approached Sarah with obvious concern. His scaled features showed the deep worry that had been growing since she volunteered for this assignment. Dr. Chen, I must protest this decision one final time. The creature has shown no signs of rational thought. It attacks anything that moves within 50 meters of its cell. My security team has had to use neural disruptors just to deliver food. Sarah nodded, understanding his concern but remaining resolute. Commander, I've studied the previous reports. Every attempt at contact has been made through force or intimidation. The Vorthak is clearly intelligent. Look at how it destroyed that patrol ship. It used tactics, not just brute strength. What if it's not savage at all, but simply terrified? The commander's laugh was bitter. Terrified? Dr. Chen, that thing tore through reinforced steel with its bare claws. It killed 2 trained xenobiologists without showing any hesitation. How exactly do you plan to approach something that views every living being as a threat? Sarah pulled up her personal data pad, showing hours of research she had conducted. Every species we've encountered has shown some form of social bonding. Even the most aggressive predators on Earth respond to consistent, non-threatening behavior. I believe the Vorthak's aggression stems from isolation and fear, not inherent savagery. The hallway leading to Sector 12 grew quieter with each step. Other station personnel found excuses to be elsewhere, and Sarah couldn't blame them. The stories about Subject 847 had grown with each telling. Some claimed it could phase through solid matter. Others insisted it possessed psychic abilities that could drive a person insane with fear. As they reached the observation deck, Sarah got her first real look at the creature. The Vorthak sat in the center of its cell, a space designed to hold the most dangerous beings in the galaxy. Its dark fur showed scars from capture, and its golden eyes held an intelligence that immediately struck Sarah as remarkably aware. Those eyes tracked every movement in the observation room, calculating, analyzing, waiting. It knows we're here, Sarah whispered, more to herself than to the commander. Of course it does. The creature has senses far beyond most species. It can probably smell your fear from here. But Sarah wasn't feeling fear. Looking at the Vorthak, she saw something the others had missed. The way it held itself wasn't the posture of a mindless killer. It was the stance of a being under constant threat, ready to defend itself at any moment. Its ears weren't laid back in aggression but forward, listening, learning, trying to understand its captors. Commander, I need to see its medical files again, specifically any information about its capture. Kellix pulled up the holographic display, showing the battle that had led to the Vorthak's imprisonment. Sarah watched as the creature fought not like a savage beast but like a skilled warrior, defending something precious. In the final moments before its capture, she noticed something crucial that others had overlooked. There, she pointed to a section of the recording. Watch its movements in the last 30 seconds. The Vorthak had been protecting something, a small structure on the planet's surface. Even as neural nets closed around it, the creature continued to position itself between the assault team and whatever lay behind it. It was defending its home, Sarah realized, or its family. This isn't a savage killer, Commander. This is a parent who was torn away from everything it cared about. The commander studied the footage again, his expression changing as he began to see what Sarah had noticed. Even if that's true, Dr. Chen, it doesn't change the fact that approaching it means almost certain death. The creature has attacked every person who has entered that cell. Sarah was already putting on the protective gear, though she intended to remove most of it before making contact. Every person who entered that cell came armed in armor, treating it like a monster. What if someone approached it like a patient instead of a prisoner? And if you're wrong? Sarah paused at the question, considering the weight of what she was about to attempt. Then I'll probably die. But if I'm right, we might just learn that the galaxy's most feared predator is actually one of its most misunderstood beings. The commander watched as Sarah made her final preparations. Despite every protocol, every safety measure, and every bit of common sense screaming against it, there was something about the human's confidence that gave him pause. Humans had a reputation throughout the galaxy for their unusual approach to dangerous situations. Perhaps their famous stubbornness would prove useful here. "Dr. Chen," he said as she approached the cell entrance. "For what it's worth, I hope you're right." Sarah smiled, her hand on the door controls. "So do I, Commander." "So do I." The massive doors began to slide open, and Subject 847's golden eyes fixed directly on the small human figure stepping into its domain. For the first time in months, the Vorthax stood, every muscle in its powerful frame tensing as it prepared for whatever new torment these strange beings had planned. The containment cell fell silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Sarah stepped through the entrance, her movements deliberately slow and non-threatening. She had removed all but the most basic protective gear, wearing only a simple medical coat over her standard clothing. In her hands, she carried nothing more dangerous than a basic medical scanner and a small container of water. Subject 847 remained perfectly still, its massive frame coiled like a spring ready to unleash devastating force. The Vorthax's nostrils flared as it caught her scent, trying to categorize this new intruder. Sarah could feel the intensity of its gaze, those golden eyes studying every detail of her approach. Behind the reinforced observation glass, Commander Kellix watched with barely controlled tension. His security team stood ready with neural disruptors, though everyone knew that if the creature chose to attack, their weapons would likely prove useless at such close range. The previous incidents had shown that the Vorthax could move faster than most sensors could track. Sarah stopped approximately 10 feet from the creature, well within its attack range but far enough to show she wasn't trying to corner it. She slowly lowered herself to sit cross-legged on the metal floor, placing her medical equipment beside her. The action seemed to confuse the Vorthax, its head tilting slightly as it tried to understand this unexpected behavior. "Hello?" Sarah said softly, her voice carrying none of the authority or aggression that had characterized previous contact attempts. "My name is Sarah. I'm here to help you if you'll let me." The Vorthax's ears twitched at the sound of her voice. Unlike the harsh, commanding tones it had grown accustomed to, this human speech was gentle, almost musical. It had been months since anyone had spoken to it without shouting orders or threats. Sarah began to speak again, maintaining the same calm tone. "I know you understand me. Your species has demonstrated intelligence far beyond what my colleagues give you credit for. I've seen the tactical recordings from your capture. You fought to protect something important, didn't you?" For the first time since her arrival, the Vorthax's posture shifted slightly. Its massive shoulders relaxed just a fraction, though it remained ready to defend itself. Sarah noticed the change immediately, recognizing it as a positive sign. "I've studied your species as much as our limited data allows," she continued, reaching slowly for her water container. "Vorthax are pack creatures, aren't they? You value family, community, protection of the young. The fact that you're here alone must be terrifying." The creature's golden eyes followed her movements as she opened the water container and took a small sip, demonstrating that it wasn't a weapon or threat. She then placed it on the floor between them, sliding it halfway across the distance that separated them. "I brought this for you. It's just water, nothing else. I noticed in your medical files that you've been refusing most of the nutrition they've offered. You must be thirsty." The Vorthax stared at the container for long moments, its internal struggle evident in the way its claws flexed against the metal floor. Trust was clearly not something it offered easily, especially to the species that had torn it away from everything it knew. Sarah remained perfectly still, allowing the creature to make its own decision. She had learned from years of working with traumatized animals that patience was often more powerful than any medical intervention. The minutes stretched on, the only sound being the steady rhythm of their breathing. Finally, the Vorthax moved, Not the explosive attack that everyone expected, but a careful, measured approach toward the water container. Its movements were surprisingly graceful for such a large being, each step deliberate and controlled. When it reached the container, it paused again, studying Sarah's face for any sign of deception. "It's safe," Sarah assured it, her voice maintaining the same gentle tone. "I give you my word." The concept of a human's word meaning anything to the Vorthak might have seemed absurd to outside observers, but something in Sarah's manner seemed to reach the creature. It lowered its massive head and drank, its eyes never leaving her face. Commander Kellex watched in amazement from the observation deck. "How is this possible?" he whispered to his second-in-command. "The creature barely tolerated our feeding it through automated systems. Perhaps the human was right about its intelligence, sir. Maybe it can tell the difference between someone trying to help and someone trying to control it." Back in the cell, Sarah noticed that the Vorthak had finished drinking but hadn't moved away from the container. Instead, it seemed to be studying her more intently, as if trying to solve a puzzle that had been troubling it for months. "You're wondering why I'm different, aren't you?" Sarah asked, correctly interpreting its expression. "The others who came before me, they were afraid. Fear makes people do stupid things like treating intelligent beings as monsters." The Vorthak's head tilted again, and Sarah could swear she saw something like curiosity in its expression. Encouraged by this response, she continued speaking. "I work with animals on my home planet. Well, we call them animals, but many of them are quite intelligent in their own ways. I've learned that the key to helping them isn't dominance or force. It's understanding what they need and showing them that you're not a threat." She reached into her medical coat and slowly withdrew a small device. The Vorthak tensed momentarily, but Sarah's calm demeanor seemed to reassure it. "This is a medical scanner. It doesn't hurt. It just helps me understand if you're injured or sick. Would you mind if I check to see how you're doing? You don't have to let me, but I'm worried about some of those scars I can see." The question itself seemed to surprise the creature. No one had asked its permission for anything since its capture. Everything had been forced upon it, from the neural restraints during transport to the automated food delivery systems. The Vorthak looked at the scanner, then back at Sarah's face. Something in its golden eyes seemed to shift. A decision being made that would change everything for both of them. Slowly, deliberately, the massive creature lowered itself to the ground, lying down in a position that would allow Sarah to approach safely. It was an act of trust that no one watching had expected to see. "Thank you," Sarah whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for trusting me." As she carefully approached with her scanner, Sarah realized that she might be witnessing the beginning of the most important interspecies contact in galactic history. Not through force or intimidation, but through the simple recognition that intelligence and dignity existed in forms that others had been too afraid to acknowledge. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah's first successful contact with Subject 847, and the transformation was remarkable. What had once been described as the galaxy's most savage creature now allowed her to conduct daily medical examinations, accepted nutrition directly from her hands, and had even begun responding to the name she had given him. Kale. The medical scanner revealed troubling information that previous examinations had missed. Kale's aggressive behavior hadn't been entirely psychological. Deep tissue scans showed chronic pain from improperly healed injuries sustained during his capture. The neural net weapons had caused nerve damage that left him in constant discomfort, explaining much of his previous hostility. "Commander Kellex," Sarah reported during their morning briefing, "I need authorization to begin proper medical treatment. Kale has been suffering from untreated neural damage for months. It's a miracle he maintained any semblance of rational thought at all." The Dracorian commander studied the medical reports with growing concern. "Dr. Chen, these findings suggest that our containment methods may have been unnecessarily harsh. But I must ask, are you certain about using that name? The creature is still officially designated as Subject 847. Sarah's expression grew firm. "His name is Kale. It's a Vorthak name meaning guardian of the pack. He told me himself once he learned to trust my communication attempts. Using his actual name is the first step toward treating him as a sentient being rather than a specimen." The revelation that the Vorthak could communicate had sent shockwaves through the galactic scientific community. Sarah's breakthrough came when she realized that Vorthak communication included subsonic frequencies that most universal translators couldn't detect. By modifying her equipment, she had opened the first genuine dialogue between humans and the fierce warrior species. He told you his name? Commander Kellix's skepticism was evident. Dr. Chen, I've reviewed the communication logs. Most of what we're detecting still sounds like growls and howls to our equipment. That's because you're listening with machines designed for species that communicate like we do, Sarah explained patiently. Vorthak language includes emotional and contextual elements that require understanding their pack dynamics. Kale isn't just making sounds. He's conveying complex thoughts about honor, family bonds, and spiritual beliefs. As if summoned by their conversation, an alert from Sector 12 interrupted the briefing. Sarah immediately headed for Kale's containment area, finding him in obvious distress. The proud warrior was pacing the confines of his cell, his agitation increasing with each step. Kale, what's wrong? Sarah asked, approaching the barrier that separated them. Over the weeks, she had convinced the commander to modify the containment system, replacing the solid walls with reinforced transparent aluminum that allowed better interaction. The Vorthak's response came in the complex mix of sounds and subsonic communication that Sarah had learned to interpret. His message was clear: something was coming, something that filled him with a combination of hope and terror. Commander, Sarah called out urgently, we need to prepare for visitors. Kale says his pack is coming to find him. The security implications hit Commander Kellix immediately. How could they possibly locate him? This station's position is classified, and we've maintained communication silence regarding Subject 847's capture. Kale's agitation grew more pronounced as he attempted to explain through his limited communication with Sarah. The concept he was trying to convey was complex. Vorthak possessed an ability to sense their pack members across vast distances, something their captors had never bothered to investigate. They're not coming to attack, Sarah translated, though her own concern was growing. They're coming to either rescue him or to honor his memory. In Vorthak culture, leaving a pack member in enemy hands is considered the greatest dishonor possible. The implications were staggering. If Kale's pack had tracked him to Station Omega-7, they were dealing with beings whose loyalty and determination had driven them across the galaxy. The same qualities that made Kale a formidable opponent also made his family a force that wouldn't be deterred by military threats. How many? Commander Kellix asked, already activating emergency protocols. Sarah posed the question to Kale, whose response brought both relief and new complications. His immediate pack consists of 5 others, but they're likely traveling with allied families. He estimates between 15 and 20 Vorthak warriors, all coming to either bring him home or avenge his honor. The station's defensive systems began powering up, but Sarah knew that military action would be the worst possible response. Commander, we need to think carefully about this. If we treat them as enemies, we'll validate everything they believe about our species. But if we can prove that Kale has been treated with respect and dignity, you're suggesting we negotiate with a pack of creatures identical to the one that destroyed an entire patrol squadron? I'm suggesting we prove that humans are capable of honor and justice. Kale has been telling me about Vorthak culture. They value strength, but they respect wisdom more. If we can demonstrate that we've learned from our mistakes, we might prevent a war. The hours that followed were tense with preparation. Sarah worked with Kale to understand the protocols for meeting his pack, learning about the intricate rituals that governed Vorthak interactions with other species. The warrior culture had strict codes of conduct that, once understood, offered pathways to peaceful resolution. Most importantly, Sarah learned about Kale's status within his pack. He wasn't just a warrior. He was a pack leader whose capture had left his family without guidance. His absence had forced them to abandon their traditional hunting grounds and live as refugees among allied packs. He blames himself, Sarah realized as Kale's communication became more emotional. He thinks his capture brought dishonor to his family. Commander Kellix watched the interaction between human and Vorthak with growing amazement. Dr. Chen, in 3 weeks you've accomplished more with that creature than our best xenobiologists managed in months. How do you explain it? Sarah considered the question carefully. I think it's because I never saw him as a creature to be studied or contained. I saw him as someone who was hurt and far from home. Sometimes the most powerful diplomatic tool is simply treating others the way you'd want to be treated, if positions were reversed. As proximity alarms began sounding throughout the station, Sarah knew that their theory was about to be tested in the most dramatic way possible. Somewhere in the depths of space, Kale's family was approaching, and the next few hours would determine whether first contact with the Vorthak would end in understanding or tragedy. Kyle's golden eyes met Sarah's through the transparent barrier, and she saw something there that gave her hope, trust. Not just in her, but in the possibility that two vastly different species might find a way to coexist with honor and mutual respect. The Vorthak ships emerged from hyperspace like ghosts materializing from the void. Their vessels were unlike anything in the galactic databases, crafted from materials that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Station Omega-7 sensors could barely track them as they moved with predatory grace toward the facility. Commander Kellick stood in the command center, watching the tactical display with growing unease. 17 vessels confirmed, all of unknown configuration. They're not responding to standard hailing frequencies. Sarah stood beside him, her hand resting on the modified communicator she had developed for speaking with Kale. They won't respond to us directly, Commander. According to Vorthak protocol, they'll only acknowledge communication from Kale himself, or someone he has formally designated as speaking for him. The implications of her words sent a chill through the command staff. Dr. Chen, are you suggesting that you speak for Subject 847? I'm suggesting that if we want to avoid a bloodbath, we need to follow their cultural rules, not ours. Kale has already indicated that he trusts me to represent his situation to his pack. But first, we need to prove that he's alive and unharmed. The Vorthak fleet had arranged itself in a complex formation around the station, effectively surrounding it without appearing overtly threatening. To human eyes, it might have seemed like a siege. But Sarah recognized it from Kale's descriptions. It was a ceremonial formation used when approaching sacred or important locations. They're treating this station like a temple, Sarah realized. They believe they're coming to either rescue their leader or recover his remains for proper burial. Every movement they make is steeped in religious significance. Commander Kellick activated the station's defensive systems, but kept weapons powered down.
Can you communicate with them through your equipment?
Not directly. Vorthak long-range communication requires physical presence or specific technological interfaces we don't possess. But there is another way. Sarah turned toward the corridor leading to Sector 12. Kale needs to speak with them directly. The security implications were immediately apparent. Allowing their most dangerous prisoner direct communication with an unknown fleet went against every protocol in the book. Yet as proximity alarms continued to sound, it became clear that conventional approaches would likely result in disaster. Dr. Chen, if we grant this request and the situation goes badly, those ships could level this entire station. We have nearly 3,000 personnel aboard. Sarah understood the weight of the decision, but she also understood something the commander didn't. With respect, sir, if we don't grant this request, those ships will definitely level this station. Vorthak honor codes are absolute. They won't leave without either recovering Kale or avenging him. Minutes later, Sarah found herself in Sector 12, standing before Kale's containment area, as technicians worked frantically to establish a communication link between his cell and the approaching fleet. The massive Vorthak warrior had never appeared more imposing, his golden eyes reflecting both fierce pride and deep concern for his approaching family. Kyle, Sarah said softly, your pack is here. They've come for you. The warrior's response came in the deep, complex tones that had become familiar to Sarah over their weeks together. His message carried layers of meaning: gratitude for her care, concern for his family's safety, and a formal request that demonstrated just how much their relationship had evolved. He's asking me to stand as his advocate, Sarah translated for the command staff. In Vorthak culture, this is a position of enormous responsibility. If I accept, I become partially accountable for his actions and his welfare. Commander Kellick's expression showed his disbelief. Dr. Chen, you've known this being for 3 weeks. Are you really prepared to stake your life on its trustworthiness? Sarah looked through the transparent barrier at Kale, remembering the first day she had entered his cell when everyone expected her to die. The creature that had been labeled as savage had shown her nothing but respect and growing friendship. More than that, he had taught her about honor, loyalty, and the pain of separation from family. Yes, Commander, I am. The communication system crackled to life as the modified transmitter established contact with the Vorthak fleet. Sarah had never heard the full complexity of Vorthak communication before, and the sound was breathtaking. Multiple voices joined in harmonious patterns that conveyed not just words but emotional states, tribal relationships, and spiritual connections. Kale's response was immediate and powerful. His voice carried across the void to his waiting family, and even through the technological barriers, Sarah could hear the joy and relief in his complex vocalizations. He was telling them of his treatment, his health, and most importantly, of the human who had shown him kindness when he expected only cruelty. The response from the fleet was equally emotional. Sarah could distinguish individual voices now, each one carrying distinct emotional signatures. She heard what could only be described as overwhelming relief, gratitude, and something that sounded very much like approval. "What are they saying?" Commander Kellix asked urgently. Sarah listened carefully, her understanding of Vorthak communication having grown considerably over the weeks. "They're expressing surprise and gratitude. Kale is explaining that he has been treated with honor and respect. He's telling them about medical care, proper nutrition, and—" Sarah paused, translating a concept that had no direct human equivalent. "He's telling them that he has found a pack sister among the humans." The term pack sister carried enormous significance in Vorthak culture. It indicated not just friendship, but a bond of mutual protection and loyalty that transcended species boundaries. By using this term, Kale was formally acknowledging Sarah as family, with all the responsibilities that such a designation carried. "The fleet commander wants to speak directly with me," Sarah continued. "They want to verify Kale's claims and understand how a human came to earn such trust from their leader." Commander Kellix realized that they had reached a critical juncture. "Dr. Chen, if you do this, you'll be the first human to engage in formal diplomatic contact with the Vorthak species. The implications for galactic politics could be enormous." Sarah smiled, thinking of how far they had all come from that first day when everyone expected the savage alien to kill her on sight. "Commander, sometimes the most important diplomatic breakthroughs happen not in formal chambers but in quiet moments between individuals who choose to see each other as people rather than threats." As the communication link opened fully and Sarah prepared to speak directly with Kale's family, she realized that she was about to discover whether the bonds of trust and respect she had built with one Vorthak warrior could bridge the gap between entire civilizations. The next word spoken would determine whether this encounter would be remembered as the beginning of a new era of cooperation or as the final moments before an interstellar war that no one wanted but everyone feared. The communication channel opened with a sound that made everyone in the command center step back involuntarily. The Vorthak fleet commander's voice carried power that seemed to vibrate through the station's hull itself. When translated, her words were formal and challenging, as Sarah had expected from Kale's preparation. "Human who tends Kale. I am Vara, Hunt Mother of the Silver Moon Pack, bondmate to the warrior you call Kale. You claim kinship with one who is blood of our blood. By what right do you speak such words?" Sarah steadied herself, remembering everything Kale had taught her about Vorthak protocols. Her response needed to be precise, respectful, and honest. Any hint of deception or weakness would doom any chance of peaceful resolution. "Hunt Mother Vera, I am Sarah of the Earth Pack, healer of beasts, sworn sister to Kale by choice and mutual respect. I speak not by right of conquest or authority, but by the bonds of care freely given and gratefully received." The silence that followed stretched for long moments. Sarah could imagine the Vorthak fleet commanders discussing her response, weighing her words against their cultural expectations. Finally, Vara's voice returned, carrying a note of surprise that even the translation couldn't hide. "You know our formal speechways. This is unexpected from one whose people we know only as captors and destroyers. Tell us, Healer Sarah, how stands the honor of our pack brother? Has he maintained the warrior's path despite his captivity?" This was the moment Sarah had been preparing for since the fleet's arrival. She turned to look at Kyle, who stood at the communication panel with obvious pride and concern warring in his expression. He nodded once, giving her permission to speak the truth. "Hunt Mother, your pack brother has shown honor that shames those who captured him. Despite pain and isolation, despite fear and loneliness, Kale has maintained the warrior's dignity. More than this, he has taught his captor-turned-sister about the meaning of true strength." Sarah paused, then added something that she knew would carry enormous weight in Vorthak culture. "Hunt Mother Vara, I ask permission to share a truth that reflects both shame and hope for my people." "Speak your truth, Healer Sarah." When first I met Kale, my people had treated him as a beast to be caged rather than a warrior to be respected. They feared his strength because they could not understand his heart. I came to heal his body, but instead he healed my understanding. Through his patience and wisdom, this ignorant human learned that strength without honor is mere savagery, but honor without compassion is mere cruelty. The translation carried Sarah's words to the fleet, and she could hear the complex harmonies that indicated intense discussion among the Vorthak commanders. Commander Kellex watched the tactical display nervously as the alien ships maintained their formation, neither advancing nor retreating. Your words carry the sound of truth, Healer Sarah, but words are wind-carried seeds that may or may not take root. We would see with our own eyes the truth of our pack brothers' condition. Will your people permit this, or must we take by force what should be freely given? Sarah looked at Commander Kellex, who had been following the conversation through the translation systems. The decision was ultimately his, but she could see the weight of responsibility in his scaled features. Commander, she said quietly, they're not demanding Kale's immediate release. They're asking for verification that he's been treated honorably. This is actually a sign of trust. They're giving us the opportunity to prove our intentions are peaceful. And if they decide we've been lying, then we'll face the consequences. But if we refuse this request, we'll definitely face those consequences. At least this way we have a chance to show them who we really are. Commander Kellex made the decision that would echo through galactic history. Very well, Dr. Chen. Tell them they may send a small delegation to verify their pack brother's condition, but make it clear that this station has protocols that must be respected. Sarah conveyed the commander's decision, adding her own cultural interpretation to ensure the message was received as intended. The response came swiftly. Hunt Mother Vera would come aboard personally, accompanied by 2 other pack leaders, to assess Kale's condition and determine whether honor had been maintained on both sides. The next hour was a flurry of activity as Station Omega-7 prepared for its first Vorthak visitors. Security protocols had to be completely reimagined, as standard procedures assumed that alien visitors would be roughly humanoid in size and capability. The Vorthak delegation would be nearly twice the height of most station personnel and possessed physical capabilities that made them walking weapons. Dr. Chen, Commander Kellex said as they watched the Vorthak shuttle approach the docking bay, I want you to understand something. If this goes wrong, if they decide to take Kale by force, this station cannot withstand their fleet. We're essentially betting the lives of 3,000 people on your judgment of one alien's character. Sarah felt the weight of that responsibility, but she also felt something else. Confidence in the bonds she had built with Kale over their weeks together. Commander, 3 weeks ago everyone said I was insane for walking into that cell. Today I'm preparing to welcome his family aboard our station. Sometimes trust is the only tool that actually works. The shuttle docked with barely a whisper, demonstrating technological capabilities that impressed even the station's engineering staff. When the airlock opened, the 3 Vorthak who emerged were magnificent and terrifying in equal measure. Hunt Mother Vera stood nearly 10 feet tall, her silver-streaked fur marking her as both experienced and wise. Her companions, identified as war leader Thane and lorekeeper Zara, flanked her with the fluid coordination of beings who had fought together for decades. Hunt Mother Vera, Sarah said, stepping forward despite every instinct screaming at her to retreat. Welcome to Station Omega-7, I am Sarah, and I am honored to meet Kale's pack family. Vara's golden eyes, so similar to Kale's, studied Sarah with an intensity that seemed to see straight through to her soul. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. Healer Sarah, we have come far to learn the truth of our pack brother's fate. Show us now whether your words of honor and respect were truth or merely clever deception meant to delay our righteous anger. Sarah nodded, leading the delegation toward Sector 12. As they walked, she realized that the next few minutes would determine not just Kale's fate, but the future relationship between humanity and one of the galaxy's most formidable warrior cultures. Behind them, Commander Kellex followed with a small security detail, knowing that if violence erupted, their weapons would be useless against beings of such power. Everything now depended on whether a human veterinarian had truly understood the heart of an alien warrior. The moment Hunt Mother Vara saw Kale through the transparent barrier, the entire atmosphere in Sector 12 changed. The massive Vorthak warrior, who had shown Sarah such careful patience over their weeks together, threw back his head and released a sound that made the station's hull ring like a struck bell. It was a call of joy, recognition, and desperate longing that needed no translation. Vara's response was immediate and equally powerful, her voice joining with Kale's in harmonies that spoke of bonds deeper than words could express. War Leader Thane and Lore Keeper Zara added their voices to the reunion song, creating a symphony of emotion that brought tears to Sarah's eyes. "My pack brother," Vara said when the greeting song concluded, her words carrying a mixture of relief and barely controlled anger. "They keep you caged like a wild beast rather than housed with the honor due a warrior." Kale's response was swift and surprising. Instead of agreeing with his pack mother's assessment, he spoke at length about his treatment, specifically mentioning Sarah's care and the respect she had shown him. Sarah could hear her own name repeated several times in his complex vocalizations. "He's defending us," Sarah realized with amazement. "He's telling them that the containment was necessary for everyone's safety, but that we've treated him with dignity once we understood who he really was." Vara's attention turned to Sarah with new interest. "Healer Sarah, our pack brother, speaks words that puzzle us. He says that you have shown him the true heart of your species, that you saw his warrior soul when others saw only threat and violence. Explain to us how this came to pass." Sarah took a careful breath, knowing that her next words would be crucial. "Hunt Mother, when I first came to Kael, my people had made terrible mistakes born of fear and ignorance. They treated him as a monster because they could not see past their own terror. I came simply to heal his body, but he taught me to heal my understanding." She gestured toward the medical equipment that had become familiar fixtures in Kael's area. "Your pack brother suffered in silence, hiding pain that would have broken lesser beings. When I showed him basic kindness, he responded with patience and wisdom that shamed my entire species' approach to first contact." Lorekeeper Zara stepped forward, her ancient eyes studying Sarah with the intensity of one trained to read truth in every gesture and tone. "Show us this kindness you speak of, Healer Sarah. Demonstrate how a human tends to a Vorthak warrior." Sarah looked at Commander Kellix, who nodded his permission despite obvious nervousness. The containment barrier was lowered for the first time since Kyle's arrival, allowing direct physical contact between human and Vorthak in the presence of his pack family. Kyle's reaction was immediate. He moved toward Sarah with the careful grace she had come to know, stopping just close enough to gently touch her shoulder with one massive clawed hand. The gesture was unmistakably protective, a clear statement that she was under his personal protection. "Pack sister," he said in the simplified Vorthak he had taught her, his voice carrying warmth that translated clearly to his watching family. Sarah reached into her medical kit and withdrew the scanner she used for their daily health checks. "May I check your healing progress today, Kale?" she asked, maintaining the routine that had become comfortable for both of them. What followed was a demonstration of trust that left the Vorthak delegation speechless. Kale submitted to the medical examination with complete cooperation, even turning to expose old scars and sensitive areas that no Vorthak warrior would normally allow strangers to see. Throughout the process, Sarah maintained a gentle commentary, explaining each procedure and asking permission before moving to new areas. "His neural damage is healing well," Sarah reported to the delegation. "The pain that drove much of his initial aggression has been successfully treated. Physically, he's in excellent condition." War Leader Thane spoke for the first time since entering the station. "Healer Sarah, what you show us challenges everything we have learned about human nature. Your people are known to us as conquerors and destroyers, yet you tend our pack brother with the care of a blood relative." Sarah finished her examination and carefully stored her equipment. "War Leader Thane, I cannot speak for all humans, only for myself. But I believe that what you've seen here represents who we can be when we choose understanding over fear." Hunt Mother Vara had remained silent throughout the examination, but now she stepped closer to Sarah. "Healer Sarah, there is a question that must be asked. When our pack brother spoke of you as pack sister, he used words that carry binding obligations in our culture. Do you understand what this means?" Sarah had been dreading this moment, knowing it would come but uncertain how to respond. "I believe it means that I have accepted responsibility for Kale's welfare and honor, just as he has accepted responsibility for mine." "It means more than this," Vara said seriously. "It means that any harm done to him is harm done to you, and any honor given to him must be shared with you. It means that if we take him home, You have the right to come with him. It also means that if you keep him here, we must consider you as his guardian rather than his captor. The implications hit everyone in the room simultaneously. Sarah realized that she had inadvertently become the first human to be formally adopted into a Vorthak pack structure. Commander Kellex understood that his prisoner had effectively become a diplomat under the protection of both his species and his adopted human sister. Hunt Mother Vara, Commander Kellex said carefully, what does this mean for the relationship between our peoples? Vara's response carried the weight of authority that would reshape galactic politics. It means, Commander of the Star Station, that humans are no longer unknown to us. Through the bond between our pack brother and his chosen sister, your species has earned the right to be judged by your actions rather than your reputation. She turned back to Sarah with something that might have been approval in her golden eyes. But it also means, Healer Sarah, that you must choose. Will you remain here with your pack brother, serving as bridge between our peoples, or will you come with us to learn the ways of the Vorthak and carry knowledge of our culture back to your kind? Sarah looked at Kale, whose expression showed both hope and concern. She realized that whatever choice she made would echo through history, determining whether this first successful contact between humans and Vorthak would grow into lasting alliance or remain an isolated incident. Hunt Mother, she said finally, what does Kale believe would serve both our peoples best? The massive warrior's response came without hesitation, his words carrying the wisdom that had impressed Sarah from their first real conversation. The translation revealed a suggestion that surprised everyone. He wanted to remain on the station temporarily, serving as the first Vorthak ambassador to human space, while Sarah would spend time with his pack to learn their ways and serve as humanity's first ambassador to the Vorthak worlds. It was a proposal that would require trust from both species, but it offered something precious, the chance to build understanding through genuine friendship rather than political necessity. 6 months later, Station Omega-7 had become something no one could have imagined. The first successful diplomatic outpost between humanity and the Vorthak Confederation. What had begun as a containment facility for the galaxy's most feared predator had evolved into a thriving center of interspecies cooperation and learning. Sarah stood in what was now called the Cultural Exchange Center, watching as human children from the station's civilian families played alongside young Vorthak cubs who had come with the latest diplomatic mission. The sight would have been unthinkable just months earlier, but had become beautifully routine as both species learned to see past their initial fears. Kale had indeed remained as the first Vorthak ambassador, though his quarters bore no resemblance to the sterile containment cell where Sarah had first found him. His new living space incorporated elements of Vorthak architecture alongside human conveniences, creating a unique blend that reflected the growing friendship between their peoples. Pack Sister, Kale's voice carried the warmth that had become familiar to everyone on the station. The morning reports from the exploration teams are encouraging. The third planet in the Kepler system shows excellent potential for the joint colony we discussed. Sarah turned from watching the children play to review the data Kale presented. The idea of a joint human Vorthak colony had emerged from their discussions about how to formalize the alliance between their species. Rather than attempting to integrate into each other's existing worlds, they proposed creating something entirely new together. The atmospheric composition looks perfect, Sarah agreed, studying the planetary surveys. And the large landmasses would provide room for both human cities and Vorthak hunting grounds without conflict. Commander Kellex approached their discussion area, carrying news that had become common over recent months. Dr. Chen, Ambassador Kale, we've received formal requests from 17 more species, asking to establish diplomatic contact through Station Omega-7. It seems word of our success here has spread throughout the galaxy. The transformation of Station Omega-7 into a diplomatic hub had been unexpected but welcome. Other species, seeing that humans and Vorthak could overcome their differences, had begun seeking similar opportunities for peaceful contact. The station that had once housed the galaxy's most feared prisoner now hosted delegations from across known space. Has there been any word from the Galactic Council about our application for formal recognition? Sarah asked. Actually, yes, Commander Kellex smiled. They've not only approved the Human Vorthak Alliance for Council membership, they've asked both our species to serve as mediators for other first contact situations. Apparently, our methods have been remarkably successful compared to traditional diplomatic approaches. Sarah thought back to that first day when she had simply chosen to treat Kale with kindness instead of fear. The ripple effects of that decision continued to amaze her. The medical techniques she had developed for treating Vorthak physiology had been adapted for dozens of other species. The communication protocols they had established had become the standard for interspecies contact. Most importantly, their friendship had proven that the greatest barriers between species were often fear and misunderstanding rather than genuine incompatibility. "Pack sister," Kale said, using the title that had become his standard address for her. "There is something I wish to discuss with you privately." They moved to a quieter area of the center, overlooking the main docking bay where ships from a dozen different worlds came and went daily. Sarah had learned to read Kale's expressions well enough to know when something important was troubling him. "What's on your mind, Kale? The success we have achieved here brings great honor to both our peoples, but it also brings responsibility. Hunt Mother Vera has sent word that the Confederation elders wish to formalize our alliance through traditional ceremonies. This would require both of us to travel to the homeworld for an extended period." Sarah understood the significance of what he was describing. Vorthak ceremonies were elaborate affairs that could take months to complete, involving complex rituals that would officially recognize her as an honorary member of their culture. It was an unprecedented honor, but also a daunting responsibility. "How do you feel about that?" she asked. Kyle's expression showed the mixture of pride and uncertainty that had become familiar during their months of friendship. "I am honored beyond words that my people would offer such recognition to a human, but I am also concerned about leaving this work we have built together. The diplomatic missions, the cultural exchange programs, the research initiatives, they all depend on our partnership." Sarah smiled at his concern, recognizing the same dedication to their shared mission that had made their alliance so successful. "Kale, don't you see? The fact that we've built something that can continue without us constantly managing it is proof that it's truly working. We've created institutions and relationships that go beyond just our personal friendship." As if to demonstrate her point, they watched as Dr. Martinez, Sarah's former colleague who had initially opposed her approach to Kale, successfully mediated a dispute between two newly arrived alien delegations. The techniques he was using were ones that Sarah and Kale had developed together, now being applied by others who had learned from their example. "Besides," Sarah continued, "imagine what we could accomplish if I truly understood Vorthak culture from the inside, and you had formal recognition as a bridge between our worlds. We'd return here with knowledge and authority that could help us solve even more complex diplomatic challenges." Kale's agreement came in the form of one of his rare full smiles, an expression that still surprised humans who expected constant ferocity from Vorthak features. "Then we shall accept the Confederation's invitation, but first there is one more thing I must ask of you." "What's that?" "The ceremony requires that I present my pack sister to the assembled elders, with a formal recounting of how our bond was formed. I will need to tell them about the human who chose compassion over fear, healing over dominance, understanding over control. Will you help me find the right words to honor what you did?" Sarah felt tears building as she realized what he was asking. "Kyle, I didn't do anything special. I just treated you the way I'd want to be treated if I were scared and far from home." "Pack sister," Kale said solemnly. "That is exactly why what you did was so special. In a galaxy where strength is measured by the ability to conquer and dominate, you showed that the greatest strength lies in the courage to extend trust to those who are different from yourself." Looking out at the bustling station that had become a symbol of hope for peaceful coexistence throughout the galaxy, Sarah realized that their story was far from over. They had proven that individuals could bridge even the vastest cultural divides, but now they had the opportunity to help entire civilizations learn the same lesson. "Then let's go tell the Confederation elders about the power of seeing someone as a person rather than a threat," Sarah said. "And while we're at it, let's see what other impossible friendships we can help the galaxy discover." As they began planning for their journey to the Vorthak homeworld, both Sarah and Kale knew they were embarking on the next chapter of an adventure that had begun with one simple choice: to respond to fear with kindness, to meeting aggression with patience, and to treat every being they encountered with the dignity and respect that all intelligent life deserved. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders yet to be discovered, But they had learned that the greatest discoveries often came not from exploring new worlds, but from learning to truly see the beings who shared those worlds with them.